In this challenge review, let's get a random photo spawning. So before we do anything, we need to select a random index. So we're going to define here an int random index, and that's going to be equal to the random range value. So we're going to say equals random.range between 0 and the picture length. So however many elements are in that array. Once we have our random index, we can then instantiate, well, the pictures based on its random index. And I want to do so at vector3.0 with a quaternion.identity rotation and then a parent object. That parent object is actually going to be the game object that this script is attached to, I believe. So if we are on the pictures game object, then I can just say this.gameObject is the parent. So here it's this.gameObject, meaning this game object the script is attached to. So this.gameObject. Alternatively, you could have created a variable to hold the game object of the parent and then drag it in the inspector. But this does the exact same thing. Let's go ahead here, see what errors we have. And it says the game object this component is attached to. A component is always attached to a game object. And it looks like we need to add transform. So we want the game object's transform component, which is how we parent it to an object or child it. There we go. We can now clean up our code. We're not doing anything yet with update. We can delete that and let's save it and test it out. So if we run this, we should have a random painting assigned to the center. I'm going to delete the painting 07 here. Let's run the application. And we should have a random photo. And you'll see here that painting 11 was instantiated, but we can't see it. And the question here is why? And it's because the rotation was actually 180, and it probably should be 0, 0 maybe. And let's see. It is unclear why we can't see that photo. Okay, and it's because it's behind the wall. It's also rotated for some reason. So we need to bring it out here. We might need to modify the position of where we actually do this. And here, put it on the wall and rotate it. Boom. There's our painting. Okay, so what happened here? Why did it do that? Why is it spawning it over there? Well, part of the problem could be that I am telling it to spawn at the world 0, which is vector3.0. And what we might want to actually do is it's relative to the picture generator. So I'm actually going to say transform. I believe I can say transform.0 maybe. Let's see here. Transform dot, and there is no 0. So I can do local forward, local backwards, local right, but I can't do just this transform 0. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to say, hey, transform.position. Let's spawn it at the position of this game object. And let's see what happens when we do that. So this should spawn it in the center of our pictures game object. And if we test it out, we have a painting 07, and now we're in the wall. So what we actually might need to do is define where should this painting be positioned. And you can see here it's also rotated incorrectly. So we might actually get involved with quaternion.identity not being the default. So to fix this, what do we have to do? Well, we know that it's getting positioned in here wrong. And so what I can do is I can simply actually go through each of these and I can set the rotations to be 0. And by just doing that, that could solve the issue of them being facing the wrong way. But now it's spawning inside of the object here, and we need to pull it back. And if we look at this, for some reason, painting 11 is still being spawned in at -180. I don't know why that is. If we look here, the rotation is 0, but the painting here is -180. So I'm not 100% sure what is going on there. Let's take a look. If we click on our pictures game object, it could be because the rotation of this is set to 180 and I am childing it to this object. So what if I set that to 0 and try it again? We might just have some weird rotation objects happening in here. So let's go ahead here, we'll test it out again. We got a random painting. And if we bring it forwards here, it's still turned around, but you can see here it actually came in at 0, 0. So now we can tell it, okay, cool, maybe now we do want it at 180. Or what if I set that back to 0, but then rotate the pictures game object back to 180? And you'll see here that it flips the whole object, which is causing the problem. But we now have it correct here. So let's take a look at this from the beginning. Let's go into, here's our pictures pointing this way. Our painting is at 0, 0 with no rotation. And it's completely turned around because it's facing the same direction here. So in theory, if I were to rotate this now, you'll see here that it is actually facing us properly, but it's behind the wall instead of in front of it. So what can we do here? Well, I think what we can do is the pictures is at 0, 0. And I think we need to define, what we need to do is we need to define a hanging position. So if we actually were to select, let's say, where we want this painting to be. So right now it's 0, 0. We grab the painting, comes in at 0, 0. We need to actually rotate this. We're going to say 180, and it's going to be positioned right here. I'm going to duplicate this object real quickly, and we're going to call this like painting position object or something like that. And we're going to have to recreate this object because it's not going to save, but I just want to check the values here. So we're going to use negative 0.5 essentially, or 0.1 is what it's going to need to be. Because if it's at 0, then I think it's in the object. Oh, maybe not. And okay, and that makes sense. So here, painting position is going to be 0, 0. So let's check this out. Here's the pictures. I'm going to create a game object inside of this. And let's create called picture position. And by doing that, we should actually be right outside of it, I think. So here we go, 0, 0 relative to that. And now what we can do is attach a photo to it. So let's go ahead and drop a picture in. We'll set the position to 0, 0. And this picture painting position, not sure why it's so far up there. Let that go to 0. Okay, so here's the picture painting position. We bring it out. Okay, and then it gets 180. Boom. So that is our picture painting position. So now when we bring an image into it, so if I delete painting 07 and I bring painting 08 into it, we should have a successful picture positioning. And there we go. So we have our picture positioning object at 0, 0, negative whatever. It's a child of our pictures. And that's going to be the parent object we want to use. So let's go ahead here and update this. We now do need to grab that parent object. So here we'll specify a game object variable to store the parent for who we're going to spawn this into. Let's go onto the pictures. And we have here the parent game object. Picture position. Let's open this up. We're going to go to this .game object, and that's actually going to be the parent.transform. So now we're going to spawn with no rotations at that picture position. And I think we can use even the position there. We're going to say transform.position. That's actually going to be, hey, instantiate at the parent position. We'll say parent.transform.position. All right, let's just take a look at our whole script here and make sure everything is good. So we have our array of pictures, the parent, we define the random index, we're instantiating the random photo at the parent position with a rotation of 0, and we're going to child ourselves to the parent. And hopefully we now have a picture spawning in properly. And it's still rotated backwards. And if we look at it, it's taking the parent positioning of 180 here for some reason. And we need to now specify manually, I guess, hey, it's going to be 0, 0 rotation. So let's go ahead and try that real quickly. Instead of quaternion.identity, we are actually going to specify a quaternion Euler. So we're going to type in here quaternion.Euler, and I'm going to pass in a 0, 0, 0. Let's see if that fixes it. And it may or may not. So let's see. Part of being a software engineer, guys, is literally iteration testing, thinking through the problem, trying different things. And now we're getting into some issues where this could just be some local space issues. So we are instantiating the object. And the picture, the parent picture here is at 0. Picture position is at 180 rotation. And if I turn that around, then everything is looking good. And we have now the painting at 180. And if we put that to 0. So what I'm going to do now is go back into our thing here, set this to be 180 on the Y there. And then we're going to reset this one to be 0. Let's test it out. And now the object should have a 180 degree, and there we go. Everything is finally how it should be. Boom. All right. I'll see you in the next one.